This is the Build Wealth Canada podcast, episode number 22.
Welcome to the Build Wealth Canada podcast, where it's all about becoming debt-free, accelerating your wealth, and taking control of your money. Now, here's your host, Cornell Schreiber.
Hey, it's Cornell, and thanks for joining me here on the Build Wealth Canada show. Today, I have Dragon's Den winner Lee Renshaw on the show, and we're going to talk all about tips and strategies that you can implement if you want to start your own business on the side here in Canada. Now, one of the things I noticed based on the emails I've received from listeners of the show is that a lot of Build Wealth Canada listeners would actually like to start their own business on the side here in Canada, but aren't actually sure how to do it and how to set it all up, since a lot of the information out there is specifically for the US. And there really isn't a good step-by-step guide, at least not one that I could find out there that's specifically for Canadians. So anyways, because of this, I decided to build a free step-by-step video guide for all Build Wealth Canada listeners. And it's basically everything you need to know about starting your own side business here in Canada. You can check out the full video guide over at buildwealthcanada.ca/business. All right. And in addition to that, it's obviously a good idea to have your own website for your new business if you're going to start one. And so what I've also done is I've created a second video guide for you showing you step by step on how you can easily build your own website, whether you're looking to start a blog or whether you want to start selling a service or sell a product. So whatever you want to do, basically this guide is specific for Canadians and will show you how to do everything as far as websites go. All right, what's also neat is that in the guide, I'm actually building a real-life website for a real Canadian business. And I recorded step-by-step how I do it so that you can follow along and basically build your own site by watching how I do it from scratch. All right, so anyways, I'm sure you'll love it. It's totally free, 100%. You don't even have to register or anything like that. And the link to that guide is buildwealthcanada.ca/site, so just SITE. And yeah, you check it out. I'm sure you'll love it. All right, so just to recap, you can get the How to Start a Side Business in Canada video guide at buildwealthcanada.ca/business, and the How to Build Your Website video guide is over at buildwealthcanada.ca/site, so SITE. All right, both are totally free, and I look forward to hearing what you think. All right, so to supplement that even more, here is the awesome interview that I had with Dragon's Den winner Lee Renshaw. All right, Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So, really exciting story with you. A lot of entrepreneurs want to get on Dragon's Den. Not only did you end up getting on Dragon's Den, but you actually had all of the dragons offer you a deal to want to work with you, which is obviously even more rare. So maybe just to start us off, can you tell us your story, both in terms of the product and just how everything kind of came to be? And then after that, maybe talk to us a little bit about how you basically ended up dominating Dragon's Den.
Thanks. I basically the whole idea came about. I was traveling back and forth from Kitchener-Waterloo to Toronto and back and forth. I mean, it took me 2 hours each way every day. So I very quickly realized that I had to stay at some friends' houses or stay at my girlfriend's house just to sort of avoid that trip and make it a bit easier. And I very quickly realized that staying organized while you're living out of a bag is, incredibly difficult. I shove all this stuff into just a big opening in a bag and, hope for the best, really. So I realized that this was, an area for improvement. I tried to find something that might, help me. Never did. And then that idea just sort of stuck with me over the years. And eventually, after I graduated, I got a job and got some experience in my industry. And I thought, like, this is bugging me. I got to do it. This is just, luggage has really not changed since, we've added wheels to the bottom of them. So, I thought, it's a stale industry that's sort of ripe for some innovation. So I went and tried to get a prototype made of basically a bag that has these collapsible shelves that essentially expand out of it. And actually that turned out to be quite difficult to get a prototype made. I contacted a bunch of sewers on Kijiji, Craigslist, and basically none of them could figure out how to sew a bag. Like they could make like pillowcases or curtains, but nobody could figure out how to make a bag. So I sort of took it into my own hands, and I ended up just buying a bag, and I picked up a sewing machine at Walmart and just started just hacking around,
That's
learning to
awesome.
sew. And I actually sewed my first shelves, and I stapled them into the bottom of the bag, and eventually sent that off to China.
Hmm.
Um, and essentially, what happened was is I went through this whole process of actually almost like 4 or 5 months just nailing down the product and getting it figured out. And I eventually got to the point where I was ready to make an order. And I got my brother involved and took on a bit of investment money, and we made our first order, and basically had all the stuff, and it sat in my basement for almost a year. So it was very disheartening. I mean, we really quickly realized that we had this great product, but really no way of letting people know that even existed or that they could use it.
Gotcha. It's like that.
So
I thought it was a Simpsons episode, I think, where Homer writes a book or something, and then in your attic, he's got hundreds of copies of this book, and because
yeah,
it's not enough to build a good product, you have like the sales and marketing
yeah,
piece
it's
is
like
actually,
classic.
I would argue, the hardest part a lot of
Oh
times.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. I mean, ideas are cheap. I think actually following through to realize a product is also good. But I mean, unless people know about it and buy it, I mean, all you have is a very expensive paperweight sitting in your basement or garage. So,
Right. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
nobody wants that. So, yeah. So, I mean, we thought, what's the best way to tell people about this thing that's not going to break the bank? And
Hmm.
I literally just got back from Florida visiting some family, and my brother said, you know what, like next week is the last day for the auditions for Dragon's Den. Like, let's go.
That's awesome.
Let's just go see what happens. So, we packed up everything. My wife, but then girlfriend, helped us figure out a pitch, and we practiced it, and basically went and pitched it to the producers. And I mean, we actually had the girl, like, she's jumping out of her seat, and like she was so excited, and
Hmm.
and so that's sort of the first stage of getting onto Dragon's Den.
Hmm.
And from there, I mean, we basically, it was a waiting game. So, uh, they can't tell you right there that you're going to be on the show or
Right.
not. They have to
So
interview
that girl
everybody.
that jumped out of her seat, that's kind of like a pre-screener, I guess. Like she screens everything.
Well, they're producers.
Oh, the
So,
producer. Okay. Hmm.
uh, yeah, so there would be like six to eight producers there,
Hmm.
and they're all sort of the way I actually realized after the fact. I mean, they're all sort of making their picks of people that they're sort of pushing through. They each have their pitches for each of the days of filming,
Gotcha.
and they're almost sort of competing for actually picking people that will make it to air.
Hmm.
So even if they pick you to pitch to the Dragons, I mean, it's still a very slim chance of even airing,
Oh, okay.
whether you make a deal or not, actually.
Hmm.
So you could go on, you can make a deal and still not air.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so for us, I mean, that was obviously the most important part, was that it aired. I mean, whether we got an investment or not,
Hmm.
uh, I mean, obviously you'd rather an investment, but really the main thing was to get the airtime. And I think something like it's like 100 grand a minute in terms of like the actual advertising cost of being on Dragon's Den.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's what it's basically worth. So I
Right.
mean,
That's
it's
amazing.
it's invaluable,
Yeah.
really. We still get stuff to date. I mean, 3 years later,
Hmm.
based on Dragon's Den.
That's great.
Uh, yeah, so I mean, we did that, and you actually work with the producers to come up with your pitch that you're actually going to use, on the set. And we kind of came up with this idea to come out in our underwear and basically get ready for the show on the show,
Uh-huh.
using a comparison between my brother and myself of using a regular duffel bag versus one of our rise bags.
Right.
And I mean, we essentially we had the Dragons hooked right off the bat. After, we set up the problem, and
Right.
Sean's standing there, and who's my brother, is standing there in his wrinkled Dragon's Den outfit. He looks like a mess, and and I pop open my shelves, and I mean they pretty much gasped when they saw that, and and I got ready, and I looked all like pressed and clean, and I mean
Yeah.
I think it really illustrated the problem that we were trying to solve, and for them and also for the viewers as well. And,
Right.
And because we added a bit of entertainment to it, with the underwear shtick,
Oh, for sure.
it helped us get on TV. And I think it also helped us become, memorable.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it
So-
kind of got, they raised their eyebrows a bit when you came out. I'm sure the viewers, if someone's has Dragons Den on in the background, right, and they're just kind of walking from their kitchen to their, somewhere, and then they just, in the corner of their eye, they see these two guys in their underwear in the den.
You can't help but look. Right?
Oh yeah, that was really, really clever. Yeah. So I guess because the main one of the main benefits or I guess two main benefits of your of what you sell is that one, the organization that you can, as opposed to just like a suitcase where you just kind of throw everything and try to keep things compartmentalized.
Right.
Instead, you have everything nice and clean and separated. But then the other big benefit is that you're now spending little to no time ironing because now everything is kind of nice.
Stuff hasn't jostled, on route and
right.
And the other thing too is, I found when I was living out of a bag, I would wear something, but what would I do with it after I wore it? I mean, it ended up going back in the bag.
Right.
So now all my dirty clothes are mixing with my clean clothes. I'm doing my smell test every time just to see, oh, did I wear this one yet?
That's
no.
right.
Okay. Yep. Oh, I wear that one. And then everything starts smelling like a laundry hamper. It's, it's pretty bad. So, with our thing, you can actually put the clothes underneath the shelves so that they're stored separately. So you get home, maybe you didn't wear everything. You can throw the stuff in the wash that you actually did wear and whatever you didn't wear. Because I always end up bringing extra clothes.
Right.
And, that stuff can just go back in. So, it turned out that the more we looked into it, the more benefits we kind of realized with just adding simple shelves to bag. I mean, it's fairly simple when you just think about it, but the benefits are huge.
Right.
I mean, even to the point that because it hangs, it's out of reach of nasty things like bed bugs.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're sort of out of that realm of bringing something like that back home, because I think they can't crawl up walls or anything. They can only really stay on the floor. Mm-hmm. So if you're leaving all your dirty clothes on the floor, I mean, you're somewhat at risk.
Yeah. And I always say it, if I'm in a hotel room, I've got the suitcase and it's on the floor, and then you're tripping over it, and then or it's on your bed, and then you come home and you're tired, or not home, you come to the hotel, you're tired. Now you've got to move the suitcase somewhere, right?
Or you got your friends come over and it's like your stuff's like scattered everywhere.
Exactly. Whereas, and then you could put your suitcase in the closet, but then now you have to take it out if you want something from it. It's annoying. Yeah. Whereas with yours, okay, you just hang it up in the closet of the hotel room, for example, or wherever you are, and basically you're good to go. You don't. It's out of the way, it's out of sight, and it's all organized. So that's really awesome. So I can just picture that. I remember I saw the episode, when it first aired. I remember, and I remember. Your brother's all wrinkled in all his clothes, and you're kind of looking like $1 million, like you're ready for a job interview or something, right?
Exactly.
So it helps sell that message really well, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. And during the pitch, it was kind of interesting as well, in terms of the way people's reactions were. 'Cause I mean, right off the bat, Arlene was like, "That's cool,"
mm-hmm.
And I think that sort of was the turning point for all the other dragons when they were looking at it. It's like, yeah, mm-hmm. You know what, that is cool, and then Kevin gets in, and then it's. Once he likes something, then it's like everybody's kind of it, right? It's like the ultimate credibility. If he likes it, then you must be onto something. And I mean, we thought we'd be eaten alive. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
so it was a very good experience that way.
That's awesome. And then one of the things, I mean, speaking of Kevin, one of the things that I see entrepreneur, well, when he used to be on the show, at least, entrepreneurs would get torn up really badly by him when it came to valuing their company. So, if you came in there with an unrealistic figure of what your company was worth, mm-hmm. I mean, he would just let you have it. And there might have even been some people crying or on the verge of crying. I remember there was some, it's pretty, like he just doesn't hold back. Right. And, so you,
I mean, it makes a show, right?
Yeah. So it's always like, you've got that, kind of in the back of your mind, like, okay, did I get the right number? Is this reasonable? Right. Am I pitching something reasonable? So how did you do that? How did you value your company to make it, because obviously, you don't want to devalue it, right? But, you're trying to find that win-win sort of balance where you're getting what it's worth, but you also don't want to get torn up by Kevin and then everyone else is like, yeah, you're right. This is ridiculous. Let's not even invest in these guys.
I think valuating a company is sort of a fool's errand in some ways, because it really, especially when you're beginning. I mean, we had a bunch of inventory and unproven idea. And I mean, it's really, it's impossible to actually evaluate what that's worth. So, I mean, we really had to just pick a number. I mean, I'd like to think pretty much any business is worth investing in is worth at least 100,000.
Right.
And so that was sort of our starting point. And I mean, recognizing that we really had no sales to date. I mean, I think we'd sold 100 bags at that point to Air Miles. We recognized that it was a big risk for the Dragons. Actually, what was our valuation we ended up with? I think we did 200,000. We're asking for 100,000 for half the company, basically.
Okay.
So or 40% of the company. So I think that was like a $240,000 valuation. They dropped it when they countered to basically $200,000 valuation for half the company.
Okay.
So I mean, I think that based on their experience and going on Dragon's Den, I mean, your valuation that you're giving up is always going to be. Like what you're giving up is always going to be more, because just being on the show, they've essentially increased the value of your company.
Right. I know they want a piece of that, obviously. Yeah.
And they want a piece of that. Yeah. And I also think too, another thing that was important for us was, the credibility of the Dragons actually, coming on board on the show.
Sure.
I think that adds a lot of credibility to your business, especially when you're starting out as, unproven entrepreneurs and young, like Sean and I. So, I mean, that was also a really important aspect to, giving them a good piece of the pie, on the show, just to make sure that they would invest and that we would have offers and that it would be a productive, negotiation, as opposed to, well, I really like it, but your valuation stinks, so I'm out.
Right.
I mean, that does really, it doesn't really engage in any kind of conversation or give you any kind of movement with that. So, I think that's really where we kind of felt, the valuation should really go. And, we thought it was reasonable. And I think, based on their feedback, that they also thought it was reasonable as well.
Okay, that's good. And yeah, I noticed that you did the 50% sort of play where, okay, they have now a lot of skin in the game because they own the 50 or 51. I don't know. Was it 50-50?
It was 50-50. Okay. So, I mean, I guess ultimately we would both have to agree on decisions. I think that they wanted that just because, I mean, two young guys, unproven,
right?
No sales.
And so they come up with some great idea that they know has worked for many of their other businesses, and you guys can just shut it down and say no because I own 51% or more. So right. Yeah. So I could see how that really helped kind of sweeten the deal for them, saying, look, everything's going to be a consensus between us. It's going to be like a true partnership. And it will be a real win-win if everything works out.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we were really looking for, a partnership going into this, and that, we were looking for partners that had, business savvy and marketing expertise and people that we could bounce ideas off of and or at least networks that we could utilize in order to make it grow. So, I mean, I think that's why we were also okay with the 50% valuation as well. Or offer rather. So, I think that it was, like you said, I mean, partnership, that's, I think that's the name of the game sometimes.
For sure. And I mean, in this case too, like you said, you guys are just starting off, you're unproven. You're basically securing yourself an incredible mentor as well. I mean, what is that worth? I mean, even if the business ends up failing or whatever, or doesn't make as much as you dreamed, I mean, the lessons learned from these
Oh,
dragons
absolutely.
alone would, I mean, people spend so much money on formal education. I mean, here you've got dragons that are, they've been in the trenches. They are in the trenches with some of these businesses. I mean, what's the value on that? That is a huge, huge
Yeah. I
value.
mean, it's incredible. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, so many of these things you really can't learn in
Yeah,
school. I mean, you can only do them by, rolling up the sleeves and digging in head first
exactly.
and, having people that you can at least avoid some of those major mistakes is definitely helpful to make it go. But,
For sure.
at least for myself and Sean, I mean, like you said, the lessons learned, I mean, that was really, we always knew that if this was not a success, that at least it would be a springboard to the next thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I mean, even if we learned that, that would have been great. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more that partnership and mentorship is invaluable, really.
For
I
sure,
mean,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you were to say, approach Jim or Arlene and say, hey, can you be my sort of consultant mentor, and then you ask what they would charge you. I mean, that's going to be a pretty significant figure if you're just
no,
right.
yeah,
I mean, it's not something you just it's something to really place a high value on. So that's really
absolutely.
good. I'm glad you brought that out. It's not just about the money and greed. It's what the education, the learning
Hmm.
from the experience of experts. I mean, you really have to consider that as well, and what the
Oh,
value of
absolutely.
that is, because depending on how things turn out, that might even be worth more to you in the future than that very first business you started, right?
Oh yeah,
Because like you
absolutely.
said, it could be a launch pad for future businesses. So,
Yeah, I mean, how many businesses change course,
oh, exactly.
partway through? I mean, we weren't really sure if that would be us or not,
Yeah,
but yeah, yeah, totally.
yeah, that's great. So, what did you think? What do you think it was about you guys that made you ultimately stand out and have the Dragons want to invest with you? What do you think really sort of sealed the deal where they're like, you know what, we really want to work with these guys? Because all of them wanted to work with you. So you clearly gave off
Yeah,
something. You did something right.
we gave off some of the right vibes.
Yeah.
I think that I mean, the first impression was here we are. We're not underwear models by any means, and here we are coming out. We're taking a risk.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get laughed off the set. Uh, so I think that they could see that we're having fun with this. We're not overly
Hmm.
serious, but we are going to do what we need to do in order to succeed. I think that was one of the first sort of impressions that kind of helped gain traction in their mindsets. And then the next thing I think too is we had a pretty good set of presentation skills. I mean, we both, Sean and I had to do quite a few presentations in school. And I mean, this wasn't too far after school. So, I mean, that was still very fresh in our minds, being able to stand up in front of people and, give a presentation and get an idea across. And I think, being an entrepreneur, it's always very helpful if you're able to, express your ideas and being able to, relay what it is exactly that you're trying to do.
Hmm.
And I think that was also, something that was very like I think that's held high in regard, for investors. It's like the saying goes. I mean, they're investing in people, not necessarily products, because
Right.
products can change, but the people can't
Hmm.
or rarely do. And they certainly wouldn't invest in somebody, thinking that they're going to change. So,
Right.
that's what they can see today. I mean, we've got an unproven idea. It's really about us.
Hmm.
And, I think we also kind of relayed that, we would be easy people to work with as well.
Hmm.
I'm sure, after the number of deals that the Dragons have completed, they know how frustrating it can be to work with difficult people.
Hmm.
I mean, that's nobody wants to work with difficult people in business. You want to take sort of the path of least resistance and it has to be an amazingly stellar idea or business for it to overcome some things like that. So, I think that because we proved we were easy to kind of work with and negotiate, we came in with a reasonable offer. All those things just kind of signaled that this was a business worth seriously considering.
For sure. That's great. Yeah, I mean, the Dragons already have money, right? So it's not like that's the only thing that they're looking for, and they're willing to suck it up. You know, if someone is just this horrible person to work with, just seems really unpleasant, is arrogant, whatever, right? So I can see for them, it's like, you know what, we're investing in a person. I have to want to take their call if they call me. I have to want to work with them. You know, it sounds like it'll be fun, right? I can see that being, and then you guys coming out in your underwear. It's like, okay, so I mean that shows a lot of things, all right? Because it shows that, well, you guys are, you know, you're willing to do what it takes, right? You're willing to think outside the box. You're clearly creative because you came up with this. You know how to attract attention, right? So it's a testament to your marketing acumen, basically, as well, right? And your sales acumen. So you know, so even just walking out in your underwear may seem like this sort of, you know, little thing, but for someone that's a seasoned business person, you know, they look at that, and then you start talking, and you're well put together. You've got your presentation down pat. You know, you're basically selling it well, and then they're thinking, well, yeah, you know, these guys, we could get them on, you know, the shopping channel, and look, they can actually hold their own. Look, they're willing to push the envelope, maybe get out of the comfort zone a bit to do what it takes to make the business succeed. You know, these guys sound like they'll play ball with us, and then will be fun to work with. So it's awesome. Yeah, I think you really you pulled it off really well.
Yeah, and you know, when you're coming up with a pitch, I mean, you don't really realize all these things that actually may have an effect, you know, or what, you know, what they'll actually end up doing in helping us. I mean, we just thought, oh, well, we just want this to be good for TV, you know, not realizing all of those other benefits that you just mentioned. And but it's so true. You know, we just kind of did that by gut instinct in some ways. So, or maybe really lucked out. I can't really be sure which.
But you know what? Even if it wasn't like all perfectly orchestrated to begin with, and you've had sort of those skills already built in. You've had those sort of, you know, those personality traits that showed them that, you know what, these are going to be people that are fun to work with, that we can succeed with. No, it's great.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on another subject too, in terms of, you know, having everything so dialed in. I mean, I've actually found in business that really, you know, just getting out there and actually doing it,
right.
You know, it has always been more productive than trying to refine something to death. I mean, we're still, you know, trying to get our product into, you know, improving the aesthetics and getting into next models and versions. But, you know, had we never just taken that step and just done it, I mean, we'd still be at the drawing board.
For sure. I think that's a common thing in business. It's tempting to constantly optimize, and you should always be improving. It's true. But it's like, if you're spending 90% of your time trying to optimize something that's already pretty good, okay, well, maybe you should be spending more time actually getting it out there, getting customer feedback, right? Instead of just playing in your own head and trying to tweak this thing. So you're trying to tweak this small pie to make it better, you know, whereas, okay, well, what if we just increase the pie, you know, and then once it's bigger, okay, then those tweaks we make will have an even bigger impact, and then they can even more so escalate our business. So for sure, I think there's a fine balance between the two, and not just spending all your time optimizing, you know, trying to optimize this product when you don't even have a customer yet, for example, right? Like, get out there.
You don't even know what they want.
Exactly.
I mean, you have all these ideas of what they want, but you really don't know.
Exactly, right? And even how you pitch it, right? Like, you pitch it initially, they may not buy it, and eventually someone, you hear how they talk about your product and how they explain it to others, and you get a good sense of, okay, you know, maybe, you know, before I was thinking of pitching it this way, but this person's really, you know, they're targeting this other pain point that they actually have. Maybe I should pitch it this way. And and you never would have known that if you were just in your basement, you know, putting shelves together, right? You'd you know, you'd have to go.
A prime example of that is, I actually thought when I first designed this bag that it was for people who are maybe more on the disorganized side, who would be interested in getting it but want to be organized. After we did this, completely opposite. Really what it is people who love being organized, who want something that's going to help them be more organized. Like, that's really who our target demographic is now that we've actually gone through this whole process and have pretty much validated it. So it's not really what I originally thought.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And then in terms of so yeah, like, let's get back to this deal that you had with them. So if I remember correctly, you had so all 4 Dragons wanted to work with you, and I believe 2 of them partnered up, and then the other 2 partnered up too, right? And they were basically competing against each other, right? They were trying to kind of bid for your for your business,
Yeah.
right?
So there was actually 5 dragons.
Oh, five. Okay, sorry. Yep.
Bruce was the one. He thought that basically like there were excellent deals on the table, and he bowed out. So that basically left us with Jim and Kevin, who partnered up together, and Arlene and David Chilton, who partnered up together.
Okay.
Now, the Kevin and Jim deal was more of a licensing deal. So they would take our intellectual property and help us pitch it to, the major luggage manufacturers and help us get a licensing deal. We'd collect a royalty check, and then that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd give them a cut, and that would be it. And the Arlene and David Chilton deal was a bit more of a better mix. It was the same offer, 50% for $100,000 for both. The Arlene and David Chilton deal was more, okay, we'll try the licensing thing, but we'll also try and help support you, from the perspective of actually making this a business. Mm-hmm. Pitching it to the shopping channel and getting it in QVC in the States and figuring out whatever channels we need to get it onto and doing the marketing. So those were the two perspectives that we were sort of, weighing up the options for. But going in, I mean, really we were, realizing that the big thing that we were lacking was the marketing. I mean, I think Arlene was really our number one choice going in, and we weren't really looking for necessarily, just kind of licensing it off and wiping our hands clean. I mean, kind of going back to the lessons learned. I don't know how many lessons there would really be learned. We're young people. I mean, we've got the rest of our lives to do stuff with. So,
mm-hmm.
We may as well learn what we can learn. So,
for sure.
I think the licensing thing from that perspective too, it didn't really appeal to what we were looking for mm-hmm. as business owners. So,
right. Yeah, unless you want to be some licensing specialist maybe for the rest of your life, and this is okay, well, let's learn how to do licensing and fine. But then you said you could have done that with Arlene and David anyway.
Yeah, that was still an option.
Yeah,
it was still, I mean, we'd
mm-hmm.
still learn that. Plus, I mean, if a licensing deal didn't go through, I mean, Kevin and Jim's offer was contingent on a licensing deal go through. So
okay, that's a big one.
So no licensing deal goes through, then it's basically we're square one. No mentors.
Right.
No help, no money.
Mm-hmm.
Square one.
Yeah.
Other than we would have been on Dragon's Den, but
right.
Yeah.
Which is still good, but yeah, I can see that being a pretty big game changer as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, even from like a risk reward perspective, I mean, Arlene and David Chilton's offer was much better.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then once you guys closed on the deal on the actual show, obviously afterwards you had to go back at a later date. They had to do their due diligence. You had to negotiate as well, right? Do all the different agreements, things like that. How is that process like? And you take us a bit behind the scenes because we don't really see a lot of that on the show.
Yeah. You know what? I kind of think that they should showcase a lot of that more on the show. I think people like it. It would dispel some of the sort of the unknown of how the show actually works. So really, what it is, I mean, you do a deal on the show. You walk off. First thing you do, you're met with one of their advisors, and you sign a deal sheet saying that, we're committing to looking at this deal with each other, and seeing if it actually is a right fit. So, I mean, on the show, I mean, I look at it more of like a handshake deal to say, okay, let's look at each other.
Right.
We're interested. It's not so much, oh, well, here's $100,000 and we own 50% of your company the moment you walk off.
Right.
So we wrote that deal sheet. I mean, we had two dragons. And the other thing too is you're not allowed to talk about being on the show until either your episode airs. So all this time you have no idea whether or not your episode will actually air, mm-hmm. or the end of the season, which is a year after you've actually filmed it. So it can actually take a year before you can even say, oh yeah, well I went on Dragon's Den with this and we got a deal. So you can't talk about any of that. We were really fortunate in that it was actually the very first episode. It was the premiere episode of the season. So we were the first people to actually be able to talk about it. but anyway, so basically what happened was Arlene, um, she was actually the lead investor on our deal. We and then David Chilton was sort of like the tag along. But what we quickly found out is that, Arlene, you're not really working with Arlene directly. You're working with her, subordinates. However, David Chilton, he actually ended up being our lead, kind of took over, and we'd be on the phone basically like every other day trying to figure out, whether or not it was a good fit. Ultimately, we decided from both ends that, kind of going back to, how we felt about our whole business in general, and that, we're these new entrepreneurs. And then I could tell very early on that it was just too big of a hurdle for them. So, we ultimately decided to actually turn them down. And we also realized too that they wouldn't be necessarily as much help in the mentorship area as we were also hoping. They're really busy. They've got their own businesses that they're running. They've got other deals that they're helping. So we realized that there may not be as much that we can learn necessarily, as we would have hoped for giving up half the company. So I mean, we told David, let's put this on hold for now. It's not really necessarily the right fit for either party. So let's just kind of leave it be. And then we aired on Dragon's Den, and I mean, everything just skyrocketed. And I mean, we actually got calls from them saying, I can't believe we didn't do the deal. But, at that point we had sort of got what we were looking for in terms of the marketing. So, again, it didn't really seem like a good fit necessarily for us at that point either. So, I mean, we basically, went through the deal and still own the whole company, and have been learning our lessons on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So you're saying once it aired, it really basically skyrocketed your business. Yeah, I just want to get a handle on, what kind of an impact did it basically have?
Well, I mean, we basically were notified about a week, maybe less than a week before it actually aired that it would air.
Oh, okay.
So we really had no idea. So I mean, we really had very little time to prepare. And I mean, I have some of the other challenges of things that actually happened during, but basically, we sold about 2,000 bags in 3 weeks after the show. So, I mean, that's pretty good. And it actually, made up for the investment that we were missing. So it really got us going. Now, some of the behind the scene things, I mean, it was probably, the most stressful segment of my life that I probably will ever live.
Yeah. As soon as you said they only gave you that little time to know before it airs, I thought the first word that popped into my head was inventory.
Yeah. We had, luckily I had a basement full of stuff. Unluckily, we're selling this organizational product, but basically we opened up the boxes when we got them, and we realized that they didn't really fold the shelves very well.
Oh, okay.
So they were a wrinkled mess. So, I thought, oh my God, we're selling this thing. It's supposed to be people's stuff, from getting wrinkled, and they're all wrinkled. So we ended up steaming 2,000 bags in my basement. As we're selling them, we're steaming them. It was like I have an unfinished basement, so we have all these rafters above. So it was like a forest of all these Rise bags everywhere. I had friends, family, I mean, you name it. Everyone was there steaming and packing bags, and carloads to the post office. And I mean, it was very, very stressful moment. So somehow we pulled through. I don't know how, but got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, you did what had to be done, right? And I got to orders. That's great. That's great. So how are you guys doing right now? I mean, it's been a while since it aired. I know we spoke briefly before, and you said that you're actually sold out of the bags, right? On some of a bunch of the bags are actually sold out on.
Yeah.
They're doing really, really well. But I guess even if they're sold out, I noticed on your site you can still go on the mailing list, right? So
Yes.
so if any of our listeners are interested in the bags, they can go on. And if the bag they want is actually sold out, then they can always sign up on that, right? And then you'll get in touch with them once they're in stock, and they'll sort of be the first to get the new shipment, right?
Absolutely. Yep. They'll be first. We do have some stock actually just come in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so there may be a little bit of stuff available. It was a very small order, just sort of to tide us over. Yeah, so there is a few things, but if we don't have stock, then yeah, definitely they can sign up for our newsletter or just go on the product that you like and put in your email address, and then we'll give them first dibs when they're back in. But yeah, I mean the business has been going really, really well. I mean we've had our ups, but we've had a lot of downs as well. Learning our lessons, and I mean we've sort of been cycling in and out of being sold out and having stock since Dragon's Den. I mean we sold those 2,000 bags in 3 weeks, and that was October. We didn't have really anything for Christmas even.
Right. Oh yeah.
And, yeah, so I mean, it's a really good bad thing. I mean, it's good that you sold out and that people like it, but it's bad because you're missing out on
the peak time of the year.
Yeah, a lot of sales. I mean, if you had more stuff, then you could, then we'd be selling it, right, and making more.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd say that's probably been one of our biggest hurdles. I mean, even to date, we keep getting surprised by the demand over what we think that we'll be able to do.
Right.
So we consistently underestimate, unfortunately. But going forward, we're going to be fixing that. But it's very challenging with a product-based business like this, in that we've got a couple different SKUs, we have minimum orders, and we're making stuff overseas in China. And depending on when you're ordering stuff, I mean, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to actually get it.
Right.
So when you run out, it's usually bad.
For sure.
Yeah. So
yeah, that seems to be one of the recurring themes I hear when I talk to entrepreneurs who have a physical products based business, where they quickly learn that inventory isn't kind of the sexiest thing. It doesn't sound as fun as some of these cool, fun marketing things you could be doing. But it seems that inventory, if you're in that kind of business, it's something that I hear a lot of them say, I wish I focused on this more when I was first getting started, because then they get bit, like in your case, where Christmas comes and you're out of stock. And then you learn very quickly, okay, we really need to get this inventory thing out.
Your supply chain is incredibly important with a product-based business. And part of the problem with China too is because the minimums are so high, it's hard to get to a scale where you're able to sell product, like have product in stock, but also be making stuff.
Right.
At the same time. I mean, we're just sort of getting out of this stage of once we really only have the money to get the next orders once we've sold everything.
Oh, okay, right.
So you can imagine
the cash flow issues.
It's a cash flow thing, right? So we've actually recently taken on some more investments that basically this doesn't happen going forward, so that we've got enough inventory here, and once we've sold half of it, we can still meet our minimums and order more.
Right.
So that's, I mean, that I'd say the whole supply chain thing has been the most challenging and critical aspect of our business, past the marketing. I mean, we've got the marketing thing figured out now pretty good, I'd say, but yeah, the supply chain. You gotta.
I believe it. So,
and that's where we're making stuff. I mean, we tried actually making stuff in Canada, but it basically costs us what we're selling it for.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I mean, we were doing that for a time just in order to keep the sales flowing.
Right.
But
keep the customers happy so that they're not waiting forever to get the product. So you kind of do what has to be done, just to keep the customer happy, even though you might not actually be making any money off that particular order, because you obviously they're going to be pretty mad if they have to wait 3 months for a bag.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and but the problem too is that a lot of our models now we can't even make here. We've lost so many skill sets, in terms of sewing and cut and sew and all that kind of stuff that it's just, it's almost impossible to do here. So some of our models we can't even make here, like our rulers.
Oh, okay. Like the companies that could manufacture them don't
They
exist in
just,
Canada anymore. So you
they don't
really don't
exist.
have a choice
Yeah.
then to
Yeah.
go overseas.
Overseas is the only option. So
That's interesting. That's interesting.
yeah, something you wouldn't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any gray hairs
Excuse
on
me.
your head yet, so it looks like you might be managing. It looks like you're managing stress okay, at least. No gray hairs on your head.
Yeah, you should see me after Dragon's Den. I was like a wreck. But now I've sort of evened out. You learn how to manage this stuff just from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah, yeah.
After going through it a few times, I'm steady like a rock.
That's good. That's good. You got a thick skin, ready to take
Yep.
on more
Oh yeah, thick
challenges,
skin.
learn more
Oh yeah.
lessons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to take a quick break in case you didn't catch all the information about the free step-by-step video guides that I built for you about starting your own business on the side here in Canada, as well as how to build your own website here in Canada, which can actually be a fair bit different for Canadians. You can watch the entire guides for free over at buildwealthcanada.ca/business. And if you just want to learn how to build your site, whether it's for a blog or a product or a service that you want to sell, you can just go check out the how to build a website portion over at buildwealthcanada.ca/site. So just SITE. All right, now let's get back into the interview. So Lee, for those listeners that want to have a business on the side, or maybe eventually they want to actually have their own full-time business, or eventually develop their part-time into a full-time, full-blown business, like what you have done, what are some tips that you have for them when they're just getting started? You mentioned inventory, which will be pretty key if they're in the product-based business. Are there any sort of big tips, big things they should consider if they're just getting started?
I mean, for me, if I was to go back even and kind of just start all over, I was trying to do it part-time, I think I would really focus on something that I could make here and make a profit.
Okay.
You've got way lower, minimums that you have to meet. And that also reduces the risk. I mean, sometimes you can even start a business like this. Maybe you make it yourself even. I mean, if I was actually good at sewing, I think that I would have actually just sewn my first 100 bags to sell. And I think that that's probably one of the most important kind of starting points, is that you just, you don't go too deep. You prove the market, you figure out what you need to change before you start ordering 1,000. I mean, I think I really took, too big of a risk on those, that first order.
Right. Okay.
Really. And I think the other thing too is, starting, like I actually did start this part-time. I mean, I designed everything after work. Another important thing too is that you're not doing stuff for your business at work.
Right.
From a legal standpoint,
right.
I think that that's something that isn't talked about very often, but it is so critical, because if you come up with something and you've used your work resources, I mean, they could have a very legitimate case on owning whatever you've done.
Right.
Especially if it's related to your field.
Oh, for sure.
So, I mean, that would be right off the bat. I mean, that's a pretty important thing. Like, don't use your work email. Make sure you're only, you don't use any resources from work. Do everything at home. Don't let your work buy anything for it.
Okay.
Keep
those
everything
relationships completely separate.
Yeah, you need to have a wall between both of those things. So that would be,
that's a great thing.
Obviously from a legal standpoint, that's a pretty important thing. Because I actually had a case happen almost with that, because I was doing some design work for a sporting goods company. So soft goods, still related. That's how I sort of got my knowledge base in terms of how to do it. I kept everything completely separate. But I did approach them before leaving in terms of trying to maybe do we tried to work out on a deal that I could stay with the company, or do a partner with the owner. They ended up actually turning me down on it, so I did it on my own. And I ended up getting a letter from them saying that they own it from their lawyer. After Dragon's Den, after you get something big like that, everybody sort of starts coming out of the woodwork.
Right.
And I had kept everything, and basically he said he wasn't interested in it when he started. So I mean, he really didn't have, unfortunately, any claim to it. And fortunately for me, keeping good records on all that kind of stuff. So that's where I kind of come about with that. Now, in terms of actually starting a business, I mean, a product-based business, I would absolutely use Kickstarter. I mean, that wasn't really around when I first started, and it's such an invaluable resource in terms of proving your market. I mean, if you can go on Kickstarter, you can reach your goal. I mean, you've pretty much proven that what it is you're doing can be a success. It gives you a taste. You've gotten your first customers, and I think a lot of people's businesses grow from there in terms of word of mouth, and you've gained some visibility. So I would absolutely try to do stuff like that. I also think too, if you're doing a product business, it's important to set up a corporation in order to keep your assets sort of separate. I mean, I was always like, my wife and I, we own our house. I definitely didn't want some side project to drag down our house and
right
have to start all over again. So I mean, just from a liability standpoint, and somebody lifts up one of our bags and hurts their back, like that kind of stuff happens. And insurance is pretty cheap if you're doing something that's not too risky. Like I think our insurance is like maybe like $50 to $100 a month.
Okay.
So I mean, it's very reasonable. I would just do everything that you can to let people know about it. It's when you start, it's just all about telling people about it. And getting feedback.
And then, could you not get the insurance, despite if you didn't have a corporation right away, if you were just running it as a sole proprietorship?
I think the insurance, the insurance would be a good starting point.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have a $2 million liability coverage. I mean, even now, I don't know, sir, we're at $5 million, but I mean, to start off $2 million, that's going to cover you against most things.
Right.
And you're really, I'd say that the chance, obviously I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but I think that just from a personal standpoint, I think that would probably be a good starting point, even past the corporation, if you're still in the phase of just trying to figure out if it's something that is worth doing or not. I mean,
for sure,
there's a lot of added cost to getting a corporation set up.
And that's why I bring it up, right? Because I can see a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, they want to have something on the side, and they've got all these questions, and then so do I have to start a corporation? And then, well, how the heck do I even do that, right? So now they're, okay, well, now I have to meet with a lawyer. That's going to cost me quite a bit of money. Then I have to get them to actually do all the legal work for that. That's going to be expensive. And now also your bookkeeping and your annual taxes are also going to be higher every year. So it's not even just a one-time cost, right? Because now you're a corporation, which is a lot more advanced than just having sort of the default, which is the sole proprietorship, right? So now, you're taking on all these expenses, and meanwhile, you might not even have a product to sell yet, right? Maybe you're just, or you're just very, very small potatoes at this point. You're just trying to get things going. So,
and you may not know, like, spend a couple $1,000s on a corporation and then nobody wants it.
Exactly.
That stuff happens, and now you've got this empty corporation that doesn't do anything.
Exactly. So I like your tip about, well, if you are sort of, consider the insurance piece, especially like in your case where it's a product where, like you said, maybe someone drops it on their foot or, tries to lift it up and hurts their back, and they're just looking like your product's safe, but people look for these opportunities. So there's certain people that look for these opportunities so they can sue you and hopefully get like a nice little payout, right? Right. Just that's the kind of, they take advantage of people basically.
But if you're doing sporting goods, I mean, that's like really high. I mean, I guess that would be the other thing. If you're just starting out, you don't have a lot of capital. Don't do things that people can get hurt at.
Yeah, or make sure you at least have the adequate insurance.
Oh yeah, but insurance for that is like $1,000 a month.
Oh yeah.
Oh, like it's phenomenal because
okay, yep.
chance of injury in sporting goods and maybe your equipment didn't meet up to certain standards
I
is
see.
very high.
Gotcha.
So there's a very good chance that something will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I would avoid. I definitely that's one of my standard things. Like I will avoid any kind of business that is just too high liability.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah. So it'd be a good idea, I guess, as a next step for some of our listeners is if you are in a kind of business you think maybe there's some risk there, and I don't want to open up a corporation yet because I'm just starting from scratch. I don't want to spend all this money yet. To at least talk to somebody in insurance, call your insurance provider, call a few of them, call 3 of them and say, hey, listen, this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that I'm protected. What kind of options do you have? What should I be doing? Right. And if you really want to take things even further, you could even talk to a lawyer. Now it's going to cost you more money, right? But if you really like you said, if you're going into sporting goods, you really want to make sure that your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, that all the angles are covered.
Or that might be the time or the kind of business where it makes sense to try and find another company to partner with to get started, or or you've got the money to do it.
Right.
It really depends on the person. I mean, when I started, I really had nothing. So
yeah.
So I had to pick something that was, very low risk and I mean, coming from the sporting goods industry, I was privy to, the things that happened.
Right.
I mean, those things tank huge companies.
Mm-hmm,
it's crazy.
I believe
Cooper's no longer around because of that.
Oh yeah.
Because of a helmet that they developed that it wouldn't protect people against a certain type of impact.
Okay.
And it actually brought down the whole company. I from what I remember.
Wow. So I can
They're
see
huge.
your aversion to sporting goods and things.
I mean,
that.
I don't like being too risky. I mean, that's something I like to avoid. But I mean, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go into something like that.
Mm-hmm.
If that's your passion and what you want to do, it's just I think you just be realistic in that it's it's going to cost you more in terms of and that you need to get that kind of protection.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, just basically.
I would definitely not do that as the sole proprietorship unless you had significant insurance.
For sure. Yeah, so just make sure that your bases are covered and yeah, that makes complete sense. So So yeah, for sure. Like I want to make sure if someone's starting out that they are well protected, their bases are covered, but there's a fine line between that and now this just seems too overwhelming. There's too many things to do. It costs too much money to start a business in Canada, which it really doesn't. It's actually so easy to start a business here. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So definitely just make sure your bases are covered in terms of insurance if something was to happen. But you definitely don't need to start off a corporation and start hiring fancy lawyers and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And actually, coming to think of it, I think I started off as a sole proprietorship too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I started that way, and then once we did the Dragon's Den thing, I went to the full corporation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you started, Lee, just to kind of give us the listeners an idea, when you started very, very beginning, what did you do in terms of registering your business? In terms of, like you said, you already said you didn't do a corporation out of the beginning. What did you have to do to start? Basically, what do you have to do to start a business in Canada? What did you have to do?
I went online and I signed up all the forms for setting up a sole proprietorship. I paid the amount, and then I had a business registration in my email.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's like incredibly easy. I can't remember how much it is, but I think it's under $100.
What was this for the business number for the HST? Is that what you're
that,
referring to?
I didn't set up the HST right away.
Right.
So
you don't have to.
So that's another thing too. Yeah. So if your sales are under 30,000 a year, I believe you don't have to get an HST, which
exactly
I would avoid until you're at that scale, anyways, because I mean the benefits of collecting HST, there's really none.
Well, for sure, yeah, you're adding more work than you need, and you should be focusing on your business, not on playing around with HST. So
keep it simple, prove what you're doing. So you basically you get your business number, and you need that in order to be able to open up a bank account and file your taxes and all that stuff. So, I mean, really after that, you just bring those forms to the bank, you open up your bank account, put in some money, and I mean, you're off to the races to actually start doing whatever it is that you're starting to do. I chose to open up the company because it was so inexpensive right away, and then I put my money in, and then I kept all of my business related expenses through there, rather than, doing it through my personal, Visa or account and stuff like that.
Right.
Just so that I from a personal standpoint, just so I could keep it all separated. And then if I needed to put in more money, then I could track all that and keep it sort of clean that way. And at tax time, it'll make things a lot easier as well.
Yeah. So
But I mean, it's very easy.
When you registered it, you said you paid the fee. Was that primarily the system that you use if you want to pick a name as opposed to using your own name? Is that what you're referring to?
Oh, yeah. What is that? Is that Tess? I can't remember what it is. But yeah, so I ended up picking my own name too.
Right.
It ended up not being the name that we've ultimately chosen either.
Yeah.
But I mean, all that stuff, it's so easy to change. I mean, I think it's all just online forums. You don't like your name in a year from now, you just file for a change. It's all really easy. And you do need that, I believe, in order to sell products that's not under your specific name. Like for me, if I didn't want to sell bags under, Lee Renshaw, buy the Lee Renshaw bag. I mean, then then I'd have to file at least a sole proprietorship so I could do something like, Rise Gear or whatever it is that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I called them actually recently, the CRA, just to get sort of their clarity on that, because I own a couple of businesses, and and some of them are under just my name basically.
Right.
But the websites themselves aren't my name, right? Like Build Wealth Canada, the podcast we're on right now, it's right now, as of this recording, it's basically under my name as the business, right? It's not,
right.
There isn't like a separate sort of separate sort of entity. And that is okay. So I didn't even have to.
Okay. I've often wondered about that actually.
Yeah. Like I called them and I spoke to them directly, like to the guys that actually make these rules. And because I was my concern, because I have a few businesses now, right? So I thought, okay, well,
right.
Am I sort of doing these best practices when it comes to setting this up? And they said,
right.
yeah, it's fine. Like, you've got several sites. You don't need to open up a completely new business for every like web business that you have. Like it's not necessary. So yeah, I'm gonna have another.
Well,
I'm gonna make a guide actually about how to sort of do it in Canada step by step, just for all the listeners, just so that they can sort of learn. Because I think there's just from some of the feedback I've gotten from our listeners, they want to start their own business, but they just can't find the information online very easily. It's kind of confusing the way they do it. Like, if you go on the Sierra website, you kind of sometimes you feel like you're reading a legal document. It's
you're right. And it doesn't need to be that difficult.
It's really not.
It really isn't that difficult once you get the hang of it. And I think that a guide like that would be, that would be great. I had to go through that whole process of looking up online and trying to decode what the heck that they had to do. And then once I figured it out, I realized how simple it was.
Exactly. It really is. We're so fortunate here in Canada. I have some family in Poland, and for them to start, I speak with them, and if they want to start their own business, they have to jump through so many hoops, like just all these forms and like it's horrible. Whereas here, it's kind of, you can start one for next to nothing. And, which is kind of what you want to do, right? Because you want to see if it's going to work anyway, whether you want to keep working on it, right? You want to test it out. You don't want to start spending thousands of dollars on lawyers and, all these things. And then you haven't even sold a single product yet. You don't even have a business yet. So
yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, and when it costs too much to get started, it becomes a roadblock.
Exactly.
Right. Starting.
Exactly.
And it ends up being money that you could have put towards, getting this business started.
Exactly. Yeah. Money and time, and, the time you should be spending on optimizing your product, talking to your potential customers, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. And that is really the most important thing when you're starting is, that other stuff. After you've gotten this sole proprietorship stuff out of the way, it's all about the other stuff.
Exactly. So you mentioned some of the things that worked out really well. In terms of top mistakes that you've made and how you would have done things differently, kind of knowing what you know now. We kind of touched a little bit about this already, about the sort of inventory kind of being one of the big, the inventory shortage before Christmas.
Continues to be stumbling block.
Yeah.
But that would be one. Another one, we hired a mentor to help us. Mm-hmm. That ended up being a huge mistake too. You really have to pick somebody that you trust. I've found, at least in my perspective, that there's, hiring people, it ends up being that they kind of want part of the company. Whereas, I think if you have family and friends who, have some business acumen, they end up making way better mentors, than trying to hire people necessarily, unless you need somebody who has a very specific skill set,
Right, like a specialist
in your field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like say you need a specialist, like in kind of going back to the sports industry field, like in impact engineering or something like that. Right. I mean, you got to hire that person.
Mm-hmm.
You need that mentor. But from a general business perspective, I think that everyone has someone in their network who, maybe they don't own businesses, but they understand how a business is run. And those are really the first people that you should go to instead of running out and hiring, people necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there was still a lot that we gained from that thing and that experience. I mean, we did learn a lot from the guy. So, I mean, it wasn't a total misstep necessarily, but it just, you want to be careful that it doesn't kind of progress too far. I mean, but what other stumbling blocks? I mean, not focusing on marketing right at the beginning. I mean, that was huge. Really all business is really simple. It really becomes to making sure you have products, making sure you follow the legal requirements in terms of what the government wants, and spending all your time letting everyone know why you're so great.
Right.
And making it easy for them to make that purchase.
Mm-hmm.
I think just with those 4 components, that's pretty much key. And kind of missing any one of those components can be detrimental.
For sure. Yeah, I can see on Dragons Den we see that all the time, right? Where someone spent years and years developing this product, and they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars even on this product, and they've taken out, they've mortgaged their house to be able to do it, and then they haven't actually gone out and tried to market it and sell it, right? And they just kind of, the dragon just say like, stop the bleeding already. You're just
just get out of it, right?
Right. It's just like so that's the thing I think is it's fun to build things, and then you can't really get rejected when you're building things, right? It's when you start marketing
it's easy
and
to
selling.
Stay in that mode.
Exactly, right? When you start actually trying to push it and try to sell it and market it, that's when the rejection is going to happen, and that's what hurts. And so it's just easier to just keep building and keep tweaking, but then no one really knows about your product, right? So you need that second component.
People rejecting your product is, in some ways, it's a good thing, because they're telling you that you're not doing something right. Exactly. And specifically, this is what you need to change, instead of continuously guessing at like, oh, do I need to do this? Oh, do I need to do that? Exactly. I mean, when you're doing something and people are really vocal about what they don't like, I mean, it's like, don't take it negatively. It's like, wow, this is an opportunity here to do something. These people feel that passionate enough that they need to tell me this.
Exactly. They could be doing so many other things with their time, but instead they're actually chose to respond to you. Like they're trying to help you, even though it may not always sound like they're trying to help you.
It doesn't come across helpful, but at the end of the day, it is,
For sure. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. That's great. And then, we're talking a little bit about marketing and then promotion and sales. What do you find is working really well in your business right now in terms of, the different marketing channels you may be using, any specific tactics that you may be using? What's been working really well for you these days?
So we've identified essentially 3 different channels that our products sell really well at. Mm-hmm. The first one is obviously through our website. I mean, we've had that since the Dragon's Den, and we've continued to grow that through online advertising, whether it's Facebook or Google AdWords and that sort of thing. You do have to be really careful that you don't blow more more money than what you're making back. That's pretty important. So that is a little bit difficult.
Yeah, make sure to set up your tracking. You have to track it.
Yes. I mean, you can lose money very easily.
I would say even almost as easy, if not easier than the stock market. Like if you're just picking stocks randomly, you could lose
Yeah.
money. So like if you want to be a
Oh,
stock
yeah.
picker, it's ridiculous how easy it is to just, I'll just throw down 10 grand here on this stock.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and,
Yeah,
it could be gone. And the same thing, and actually with Google or with any of the other advertisers, same kind of thing, right? If you're just starting off and you're not setting a budget, you set a high amount that you're willing to pay per click, let's say, or per thousand views, then yeah, I mean, it can just destroy.
Yeah.
So you really want to start small
low
and then grow
slow.
it controllably, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely what we did. And I mean, that's actually only really prior to this. I mean, we did a lot of, we hired a PR company who, like, literally they would just go around and pitch our story to, different media sources. And actually, literally right after Dragon's Den, and then also hiring that company, we got on Today's Show.
Nice.
With the product. So, I mean, that pretty much opened up the U.S. market. And it ended up being actually bigger than Dragon's Den for us.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, the PR is also really great. But you need to be able to keep stuff really fresh with the PR company and what they're pitching. And now we've sort of gotten to the point where, we're finding enough leads with PR on our own that we're just sort of kind of letting that go. Like, for instance, I think today New York Times is running an article on us.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Or I think for something that's like wedding travel.
Oh, okay, nice.
So like doing like a destination weddings and things that you can bring with you and give to your wedding party.
That's
so
awesome.
we're in that. So we're kind of at the point where we're getting a lot of organic leads in that respect. So that's why we're focusing a little bit more on the paid leads and trying to figure that out. Yeah. The next area for us is our wholesale accounts. For us, wholesale accounts, they've never worked at retail. I don't know why. It's probably just not enough explanation for our product for it to really do well.
Okay.
So it's never worked in other companies' retail. But we've focused a lot on recently more of discovery sites. So because we've got a unique product, these discovery sites, like for instance, there's a company called The Grommet. Their whole business is about finding new innovative products from little businesses like us and you and your listeners to help them grow their business. And and for their audience, it's about finding new things, and it's more of like a social everybody trying to help each other kind of a mentality and marketplace. So we've actually found that's been a huge source of growth for us. There's another one called Touch of Modern. I mean, there's just tons of them. There's sort of like a flash sales site / discovery site. So, they don't carry typical items. Like, they're not going to carry toilet paper. They're, they're looking for that unique item that you're probably, that your listeners are probably working on.
Right.
So that's definitely a huge source. And the other interesting thing that we found about them is, I mean, they have huge email lists, and you go out in their email blast when you get launched. And what we found is that while they did extremely well, they also helped our website do extremely well, because a lot of people want to buy it directly from the manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
So we end up seeing huge boosts just on our online site.
That's great.
And then they also help us get the PR placements, like the New York Times. We're constantly watching these discovery.
Oh, I see. So I was going to ask about the New York Times. So the New York Times actually approached you because of something they saw out there.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
And it's because of these discovery sites. They're actually becoming a reason. It's the new e-commerce. It's the new commerce, actually, I think, in general. It's the way people are finding out about new things, whether it's for their news articles or they just like new things for buying, or finding unique solutions to their problems in everyday life. So I mean, that's actually our number one channel of how we sell bags now.
That's great.
Yeah, and we've only actually discovered that maybe 6 months ago. So just in the 6 months, that's become our primary source of revenue.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so really incredible. That's actually a big reason why we thought we had enough inventory, but they've just burned through it
in a good way.
In a good way, absolutely. And then our final source is we've actually recently opened kiosks in malls.
Oh, that's amazing.
So we designed a really unique display that basically opens and closes the bags as you walk by.
Oh,
You
nice.
see this thing. So it kind
That's
of
clever.
gives you that education, and it, because it's the movement, it attracts you in the mall and gets people
Yeah, it's
in.
the
And
intrigue, right? It's like the
yeah,
flashing
they're
lights,
great.
except people are kind of desensitized to those now. But like a it's like a suitcase going up and down. I mean, that's not something you see every day.
No, you don't see that. It's like, whoa, what is that? I
Yeah.
mean, we had people telling us, or at least one person, anyways, tell us that she had dreams about it and she just had to buy it because this thing was going up and down in her mind all day. It's like, are you serious? I had no idea that this would have that kind of a reaction. I mean, it's
That's great.
so it was, it was pretty cool. But I mean, the one kiosk we did that over for Christmas. We only do this for
Hmm.
Christmas. Um, well, we were actually the number one grossing revenued kiosk in the mall.
Wow, that's
We just
amazing.
did a little mall. So, I mean, it was pretty cool. But really, the best thing that we got from that was, Sean and I we did shifts there, and we talked to people
Oh,
about the product, and we gained so much insight in terms of where we need to take our products and in our business in
that's
general.
amazing. That's such a good idea.
Oh yeah, like it is
It's
incredible.
market research, but you're also
Yeah
selling it on top of
and
that.
yeah
Yeah.
and we're making money to boot.
That's
So
incredible.
I mean
You're
it's
getting paid to do market research.
yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean we discovered that we can't do it and make money throughout the rest of the year.
Hmm.
It's just there's just not enough traffic for it to really work.
Yeah. And I think
uh
isn't that pretty common with a lot of retail stores too, where they're actually losing money
yeah,
throughout the year, and then
yeah,
they basically
to
Christmas
make
is
that
that push where they need to succeed
right.
because that's what keeps them afloat, what makes the
Right,
business
yeah,
worthwhile running, essentially. Yeah.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the cool thing with kiosks is that they're technically considered temporary leasing. So
Okay.
you can go in for 2 to 3 months and then get out,
Okay.
right? And then you're done. So you don't have to be there for the bad months. And you know what? It's if if there's somebody who is starting a product-based business and it's something that could appeal to the mall demographic and it's getting close to Christmas, or even if it's not, I actually highly recommend opening a kiosk for the minimal amount of time. It is incredible the types of people that you'll meet. You'll make all these connections
Hmm.
of people who want to help you, work with you, have ideas for you. Everyone wants to share with it. As soon as they realize, you're the person who's kind of putting it in place, like it is actually a huge resource. And
Hmm.
while it's not a huge source of our yearly revenue, we're going to continue doing it
Hmm.
just just for the sake of all the opportunities that it sort of opens up
Yeah.
in market research. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I never really realized that going in. We just thought, let's just try this out, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So you actually tell them that, hi, I'm Lee. I'm the owner of Rise Gear. Like you actually tell it to them so that they can.
Well, it depends. I
Yeah.
mean, some people they kind of start like, oh, this is so cool. Like, oh, I have this like great way I can help. Who's the owner? And I'll be like, well, I'm the guy who developed it, and then you can actually start having a conversation
Hmm.
with them, and then you start, all these doors start opening.
For sure. For sure.
Every couple days there'd be some new crazy opportunity that I never thought would be,
Yeah.
an option.
Yeah, for sure. Because if they know you're the owner, because I mean, by default, people probably think, oh, well, he's some maybe minimum wage person that got hired to sit at this kiosk, right?
Yeah.
Or I think they're not going to care about. They might not care about these, some ideas I have. Whereas you're like, no, I'm the owner. Let me hear what your thoughts are. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And then they feel, like you're listening to them too, right? Which
Oh
it's a
yeah.
good way to get a good fan base going as well. Get some product
Oh,
champions. Yeah.
absolutely. Oh yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And I mean people are like telling people about it. I
Yeah.
mean it's great. And I mean for instance, one of the people that I met was the marketing director for Good Life
Oh yeah.
Fitness. So we're working on doing a gym bag. So, we might be able to do some kind of a co-branded
Oh,
gym bag
that's
with them,
amazing.
which could be huge. And it's all because I was at this kiosk
Yeah,
this
yeah.
one day.
Who would have thought,
You know what I
right?
mean? Who would
That
have
you're
thought?
meeting directors, right?
Exactly. And
Of
it
good
kind of
life,
just
yeah.
goes back to just getting things out there. I mean, everybody has to go to the mall eventually, right? Even high up people.
Mhm. Yeah, they need
So
to go get that gift for their wife or whatever, or the last minute birthday
yeah,
present or something. Yeah.
and trade shows are also really great for that too. If you have a trade show, I mean, we personally found that trade shows weren't good for like, trying to really make a business of it for our product. But we're always profitable, and we always met lots of people and got lots of feedback.
For sure.
And that's the kind of stuff that you have to do in the beginning, I think.
That's great. That's great. Are there any other sort of key success factors that you think really contributed to you having all the success now with the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a personal perspective, probably one of the biggest things was just, staying committed to an idea. I'm an industrial designer, so product designer by trade. I mean, I'm always coming up with ideas, and it's very hard not to look at, because your newest idea always seems like the most promising. Right. So, but the problem is I at the core, like, ideas are somewhat worthless. It's actually following through and
the execution,
putting in all the work and the execution and selling and all that stuff. That's really what makes an idea worth something.
Exactly.
So I would just say, pick your idea, stay really committed until either you can see that it's going to be a success, and then obviously continue at it even more, or it becomes so evident that it's just not what the market is looking for, that, maybe it is time to move on to the next idea. But, staying committed to your idea until, you've really had, good feel for that, I think is pretty important. But I also want to kind of point out too, that I had a lot of people tell me at the beginning that, my Rise idea was a bad idea. I can understand, their thought on that, but but that's where it kind of comes down to, those weren't my target demographic.
Right.
So you got to kind of figure that out too. Really figuring out who your market is very important, and that it is big enough. So I really nailing down some of those things, but really just staying committed to your idea, I think is just so important.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if you're talking to, let's say, a stay-at-home mom that has many kids, they're not traveling a lot or anything like that. Well, to her, that's not really your target market, right? So she might say, "Oh, well, I would never use this," and you could dangerously you could interpret that as, "Oh, well, maybe this isn't the right thing what people want." But it's like, well, no. I mean, she's just not. She's at home. Why would she need this, right? Versus someone who's traveling to conference a lot. Maybe they're like a traveling salesperson, right? They want their dress shirts. The last thing they want to do is, instead of preparing for their sales call in an hour, to be ironing their dress shirt. I mean, that's the last thing you would want to do, right? So that's the person that you ask and find out.
And at the beginning too, we also found, a lot of people that were older are just so regimented on putting their stuff in the drawers at the hotel.
Oh, okay.
They could just not get past doing that, but now a lot of our demographic is in that age demographic, surprisingly. But when I first started asking, they're like, why would I do that when I could just put it in the drawer? Right. But, I think you have to have some internal gut feeling that, you think it's going to work, and go for it.
For sure. And you experienced that problem firsthand, so you knew it would solve it for you, which I'm sure really helped as well. It wasn't some thing that you think hypothetically someone could enjoy. You thought, well, you yourself would actually use this, so you're just trying to sell it to people like you at that point, and then scale it from there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Although it turns out I'm not really the target demographic
anymore. Yeah.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore. But back then you were, though. Like when you first came up with the idea, you weren't.
No.
Oh, because you said it was the organized people, and you were unorganized.
It ends up being organized people, and people that are, older than, like, when I did it, I was like 25 or something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But how many people that are 25 are willing to even invest in luggage, especially more premium luggage that has those extra features?
Right.
I mean, they just really can't, justify it unless it's a parent buying it for them for school. Right. I mean, we do get a lot of that, but it's it's people in their like 40s to 60s who are, getting to that age where they have a lot of disposable income and are traveling a lot, or they're sales reps.
Right, right, and it becomes a convenience thing for them. That
Convenience,
is so
yeah.
interesting. That's
And I really thought it would be younger people and disorganized, who need help. No,
That's
it's not that
amazing.
at all.
That is such an interesting pivot. Then that's because you must have for a while. Then you must have been trying to market and sell to people like yourself when you were
Well, I was.
right, and then you see this sort of yeah. Well, that's amazing. That's
Yeah,
really
so
cool.
that's the kind of thing that you start to realize,
Yeah.
like when we did the mall thing. Even, I mean, nobody young came. Like
Hmm.
it was so apparent, and
Yeah.
it's mostly women too, because women tend, overall
Hmm.
to be more organized than men.
Okay. Hmm.
So a lot of women will be like, "Oh, I should get that for my husband because he is messy." So that's one case where someone is buying it for someone that is messy,
Yeah.
but that messy person would never buy it
That's
because they're okay being messy, right?
yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting.
So
Yeah.
that's what we've just determined, just through this market research. So, just because one person doesn't like it,
Hmm.
and actually that was another thing too. David Chilton, he couldn't get past, like, he didn't think that there was a market because he gave our bag to his son, who's like in high school, and his son used it for 2 days and gave up on it.
Okay.
So he's like, nobody's going to use this.
Hmm.
But
He's
then
not a
we
target.
realized he's not our market.
Right.
You gave the bag to the wrong person.
Right, yeah, because maybe he's okay just putting his stuff on the
On top.
anywhere somewhere else, right? And not wanting
Yeah.
having to do it. Whereas you talk to a sales rep, and I mean that's huge for them. I can't see.
Well,
why
yeah,
you
they
would-
got to be like in and out of the hotels. They might be in a
Exactly.
hotel for like a night, and then they're off to the next place,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So they've got to stay organized. They're in and out. So yeah, that's ultimately what we found was and is the market.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing. That that reminds me of another entrepreneur. I forgot his last name, but his name is Neville. He works over at AppSumo as well. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he does a lot of kind of copywriting type courses and such. And one of the but his kind of story was when he started, he had this website called House of Rave. He said where he would say sell glow sticks and things like that, like things you'd think people would take to raves.
bring you
right?
these rave parties.
Yeah, right. So he was saying for the longest time, he's kind of trying to sell it to these raver people, right? But then what he later found out, kind of similar to you, that's actually not as market. Like if someone's in high school and going to a rave, well, they don't have that much money anyway, and they're not going to be buying that much stuff anyway, right? However, what he found was that things like glow sticks and different lights and things, DJs really liked it. People who like do weddings, you know what I mean? And I think so like a whole different market, and these people would buy these on a recurring basis too, right? So not like I'm go this weekend I'm going to buy a glow stick. It's more I'm going to now buy, I have 10 events lined up in the next few months. I'm going to buy this thing in bulk, right? For everyone, that kind of thing. So it completely, blew his business out of the water. And it's all because, and it's so similar to your story, right? Where you just, you just change your target market, and it's not always what you initially think it is. That's really, really
No, it isn't.
clever.
Yeah, it isn't. And the other thing that we also realized too is it depends a lot on the channel as well. So for instance, in the retail stores, like in our kiosks, I would say it's almost 80% women.
Okay.
Online, it's almost 50-50.
Okay.
Male to female. So even just the way you where you're doing it, I mean, it can have a huge impact in terms of who's interested and who's buying. So, yeah, I mean, you gotta sort of keep an open mind on all those things when you're doing it, and not to be afraid to branch out and just test. Like, oh, would this person like it?
For sure.
And
I guess not being so kind of set in your ways that, hey, this is, I'm the target market. This is who it is. I'm going to stick to it. I know best, as opposed to being open that, hey, you know what? Maybe there's other uses for it.
Oh, yeah. And I'm a firm believer of, I mean, I don't care if it's something that I like. I care if it's something that my customers like.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're in business, right? That's the,
yeah.
I mean, ultimately they're the ones paying you, right? So that you can keep being an entrepreneur, right? So you better care what they have to say.
Exactly.
For sure.
Otherwise you've got an expensive hobby.
Exactly. So my last question for you, Lee, before you kind of, we part and you tell us more about where we can learn more about Rise Gear. If you were to start completely from scratch, let's say, you only had $500 saved up, and you want to use that to start your own business on the side, something like that, where would you invest your time, and where would you invest that money if you were just completely starting from scratch?
I mean, obviously the first thing I start off with is get the business license. I would try and come up with a product that I could either, make myself to at least prove the market, or, I could make domestically in a small volume, or at least build a prototype. And once I had a prototype, I would absolutely go on Kickstarter. I mean, anyone can do it. There's no, like Dragon's Den, you have to get past a certain benchmarks in order to actually get on. But I mean, Kickstarter, it's really the market who decides whether or not you have a good idea.
Right.
And from there, I would just, I would create a really good video, and I would invest in some beer money for some videographer friends or something, because they might be a bit over the $500 budget. But I mean, or you can even do it yourself. I mean, there's lots of people who do great videos
just using their iPhone,
just using their iPhone, and you just look it up online. I mean, there's tons and tons of great information out there on that. And then I would just focus the rest of my time on just PR, like letting blogs know, and like any kind of media know about your Kickstarter campaign. And I mean, from that point, I mean, it's, if you're a success, you've hopefully made enough that you can grow that, so you can grow that business there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great tip. And by that time, you hopefully would have validated it. You'll know whether there's some good, some potential demand, and whether you should keep pushing forward, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great tip. No, well, thanks so much. And yeah, tell us a bit more, Lee, about where we can learn more about you, more about Rise Gear.
Yep, absolutely. You can check out all of our bags at risegear.com. It's got some good stuff on our background history and where we came about in our story, and basically all of our bags are available for sale currently, and unless the New York Times blows us out of the water again. But yeah, that's basically the best place to get it. And if any entrepreneurs have any questions, they can reach me at lee@roundcirclegroup.com.
All right, so thank you, Lee. The Dragon Slayer Renshaw will be your
my new title.
Your new title. Okay. Sounds great. All right, thanks a lot, Lee.
Thank you very much, Cornell.
All right, take care. Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Lee. You can check out risegear.com to see what he has to offer and basically what he's built over the years. And of course, if you want to start your own business on the side here in Canada, be sure to check out the only, as far as I know, step-by-step video guide on how to start your own side business here in Canada and how to build your own website for that business. Both guides are totally free, and you can get them at buildwealthcanada.ca/business. And you can get the guide on how to build your own website here in Canada over at buildwealthcanada.ca/site. All right, so have a great week. I look forward to seeing you there. I hope you check out the guides and let me know what you think. All right, take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Build Wealth Canada podcast at www.buildwealthcanada.ca.